I don't read much fiction anymore, but this book literally changed my life. This isn't us at Impact Theory being in a bubble. There is a whole world of hyper-successful entrepreneurs for whom it's not enough to have made a ton of cash. They really want to do something. What's up, B-Rock? How you doing? How have you been? See you.
Hey, you too.
What is up, everybody? I'm here at one of my favorite bookstores in LA, and it is not often that I go to a physical bookstore, but I'm here with my man Daniel DiPiazza, aka at Rich 20-something. We got to get your book out, man.
Oh, I got to get it out.
Where that book is, man? There it is. There will be no mistake what this book is about. Ditch your average job, start an epic business, and score the life you want. Really excited for this bad boy to come out, which is why I want to be out here in full force supporting this. This man has been a day one supporter of Impact Theory. I could not be more grateful, and I want to make sure that people understand what this guy is all about. So today, what he and I are going to be doing, going inside, each picking 3 books that have really impacted us on a deep and transformational level. Come on, let's go inside, let's pick some books.
Love it.
We are here on UCLA campus, which is stunningly beautiful. It is a place of higher learning because we want to talk about books and education's place moving forward. And so each of us picked 3 books, although I have to confess, I picked 4. Since I have 4, I guess, for balance sake, we'll start with The Gunslinger. Now, I don't read much fiction anymore, but this book literally changed my life. It is the reason that I started reading. My dad, basically I was saying I don't like to read, and my dad said, look, read this one book. If after reading that you still don't like reading, I'll never ask you to read another book again. So I took it, I read it, and to this day, in fact, we're gonna see if I'm right, I remember the first line, which is, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. Come on. I don't know what it was about that just really, really hit me. It captivated me, and by the time I got to the end of it, I realized everyone likes to read, just some people haven't found what they'd like to read about.
That's a really great point, yeah. This is The Way of the Superior Man by Daodejing.
Nice.
You read this yet?
No.
I picked this book because I read this once a year.
Okay.
I've been reading this since I was 18, once a year.
Wow.
And
how did you come across it at 18?
I just started figuring out what personal development was, and this is probably one of the more like new agey things I read, because I'm not too much into the secret and the spiritual stuff, a little bit. But what I like so much about this book is that it seems to me that as I get older, the book itself becomes meaningful in multiple different places, because this book deals with how to think about yourself, how to think about your relationships to women in your work, and how to develop a sense of self-mastery.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, great book. I like it a lot. It's one of my favorites. Read it every year. Nice. Pick it up.
Well, let's go with one that I think maybe is a bit obvious for me, which is Phantoms in the Brain, V.S. Ramachandran. This book was, in fact, it says right here on the cover, enthralling. He's very cheeky and funny, and he tells these incredible tales that are in and of themselves like spellbinding. Whether you're interested in neuroscience or not, he really draws you in. But in looking at the ways that the brain goes awry, there's something incredibly revelatory about how the brain is pulling tricks on you. And it was really reading this that brought home to me the fact that my brain is lying to me, maybe with all the best intentions in the world, but it is constructing a reality from the inputs that it gets and from the hard wiring of, from an evolutionary perspective, like all the heuristics, the rules of thumb, the algorithms and everything that it's using. And those things sometimes work for you in some contexts, but other contexts, they don't work. And if there was one gift I could give anybody, it would be to have a healthy skepticism for what your brain tells you. And once I realized that I could be skeptical, then it was like, okay, well, if I'm picking and choosing what I believe, that's where this notion of do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. That's it. Like, and I'm not going to, just because I have a negative emotion, I'm not going to believe it. And just because I have a positive emotion, I'm not going to just believe it. It's got to go through the filter of whether or not it helps me.
Have you read this one yet?
I
Deep
have.
Work? Yeah? So
Fantastic.
It's pretty good, right? Deep work goes into what it takes to create astounding levels of productivity and prolific levels of work, kind of like the Pablo Picasso. So the book is about focus, really, when it comes down to it. But if you look outside the book, look at how the author is living. Cal doesn't have any social media. He's pretty hard to get in contact with. He's very focused on his work. He produces a lot, and he's very serious about his time. Also, another thing that was brought to my attention when I read this, there's a finite amount of like deep work you can do in a day. So maybe you might get 2 to 3 hours out of like deep work, and the rest has to be a little bit more surface level because there's only so much time you can focus. Your brain has a finite amount of like decision-making power and willpower, and so when you learn how to balance that, plus you get really clear on what you need to do, you can get a lot more done.
All right, the Daodejing by Stephen Mitchell, at least his translation. By Lao Tzu, obviously, as the author. This book was one, in terms of content, so like Stephen King sort of structurally made me open my mind to reading, but this book actually, like, I went hard for that Taoist viewpoint for a while, like in a big way. And it really, that whole concept of be like water. I had a friend, in fact, one of my best friends growing up, who was also really into the Daodejing. And so for us to be able to talk and bond and over that was incredibly, incredibly powerful. But I mean, now looking back at how young I was when I encountered it, I encountered it very early in my life, but at the time it felt like, man, I've lived my whole life from a Western perspective, and now to get like this Eastern perspective is so fascinating. And it's such a different way of looking at it. Instead of it being about like dogma, it was about how to think about the world. Right? And that really put me on that path to realizing that perspective, like just how you come at something is so important. And that now, I mean, has solidified into like my stance on life. Like perspective matters.
Okay, 4 Agreements. Have you read this one?
I haven't.
The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Now, a couple things about this.
Is this fiction or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction, similar to some of the books we've been talking about. Really is more about a way of thinking. And so if you want, even open the inside cover, you can see like they're already laid out. 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. When it talks about being impeccable with your word, it doesn't just mean with your word to other people. Yes, honor your commitments, that's a big one. But one thing that I got out of this was be impeccable with your word to yourself. The way that you talk to yourself, just like we were discussing earlier, affects the actions you take, the way you think about yourself, and what happens in your world. Self-talk is very important, and it's very overlooked in our discussion of self-development. There's a lot of input that we take in trying to like fix what's going on in our heads, but a lot of times we don't fix our self-talk. When I was a kid, one of the things that stuck out to me a lot about my grandmother was that she'd monitor things I would say. So if I'd ever say something like, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or like, "Oh, why didn't I do that?" she'd always say, "Don't talk about yourself like that." She'd always catch me on the slightly negative ideas I'd have about myself, to the point where I was almost unable to say anything negative about myself, which I feel like it really helped me, because only recently, as I've been like getting more stressed with more work, have I even seen a few chinks in my armor where I'm like, oh, that was kind of a negative thought, but I've kept the majority of them out because I have such a strong base in self-belief, and this book really talks about that.
All right, my last one is Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman. This was a real eye-opener for me. It was taking these beautiful like what-if scenarios and showing me another level to fiction, that fiction could really be thought-provoking. It is. It's a bunch of short stories about different meditations on time. And there's one story in here that is stuck with me literally to this day, and I probably read this book when I was like 14. And it's a world in which everyone lives forever. And the world fractures into 2 kinds of people. Type 1, never do anything because there's always time to do it tomorrow. And then type 2, do everything, because there's enough time to do everything that you've ever wanted to do
know which
and
one
you
you
can
are.
get good at. Right? And so I really feel like that planted a seed in me that has become, I've never taken, like, even when I was young, I never had a sense of, oh, you can just like put it off and put it off and put it off, because like, what kind of person are you? Let's talk about your book. Now break it down for everybody. What made you want to write this book? This is a commitment for you.
Most people in the business niche, I guess this is a business book, it's a business life book. A lot of people don't write their own books. I wrote every word of this book.
Wow.
It's this really interesting hybrid between my personal experience and the actual strategy behind someone who doesn't know what they want to do, and figuring out what that process is going to be for your life, for starting a business, for finding what it is you're good at, for connecting with people that care about your work, and then moving forward, even if you're at absolute ground zero, which a lot of us start from. Pick up a copy of the book, read through it and email me, or DM me on Instagram, or hit me up. I'm widely available. One of the things that I take pride in the most is that I actually respond to people. Surprise, it's actually me. It's not my virtual assistant. Pick up the book, start reading, and find the place that's most relevant to you. Then email me, get in contact with me. Let's take the conversation from there.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, guys, one thing that I absolutely love about Daniel is that he takes a no BS approach. He's not a, hey, like, get rich quick. Like, I never would have vibed with somebody like that. And right from the jump, when we first met, he was just being honest and real about his own journey, about insecurities, pain points, changes that he had to go through, everything in order to be successful. And he opens himself up and shares it with his audience. And I love that, man. It's about real value. It's about not pulling punches and telling people it's going to be easy. It's about telling people to put in the work. This man has been a supporter of impact theory from day one. And that is so incredibly meaningful to me. When nobody knew who we were or what we were doing, he was there helping us, trying to push and promote and get the word out, because he thought that we were doing something unique. And man, I'm telling you, he's got a strategy to make friends before you need them, and that to me is the only way to live life. When you start by giving something instead of asking what you could get. I literally had nothing to offer him when we first met, and he still bent over backwards to help me and to help the rest of the team, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And so guys, please, I'm asking straight up, go buy the book. I think it will be valuable. I think it's going to give you something that will be a huge takeaway for you. And then also, he has supported this community literally before anybody else. So help him out. Let's get this book on the list. Let's help it make an impact with as many people as we can. And that's it, man. So go out, whatever preferred method you have, get this book, go buy it, show the love, support it, and learn something and empower yourself. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Find this man at Rich20something. You won't regret it. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.